Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today I'm taking I'm revisiting an article back from June of 2016 entitled "The Role of Blacks on Brazilian Television: The Continuation of Secondary Roles, Stereotypes, and Invisibility." This I think this the title of this piece speaks for itself. I would just ask that in the context of wherever it is that you live in the world, where there are Black people living in that society, and if you see them represented on television, just keep a comparative analysis in the background as I go through this article and tell me, does this sound familiar in whatever country you live in? Okay, we'll get straight into this article tonight. So this is o negro na TV brasileira, which means the black or the black person in or on Brazilian television. Okay. So the time is past due. For decades, many writers, professors, activists, etc., have pointed out and denounced the image of Black people in the mainstream media. Yes, this blog should be included in this group as we have long sought to expose the situation of Afro-Brazilians in the media to the world outside of Brazil that doesn't speak Portuguese. But this and only this has been the principal reason for exposing the situation. I personally don't expect that Brazil's media will be changing its programming or the persons featured in this programming anytime soon. Brazil's media is and has been controlled by persons who consider themselves white and or see the world from a European mindset since its inception. And as Brazil's economy and political environment is also controlled by persons who consider themselves white and or have a Eurocentric mindset, they use such power of control and influence to promote their ideals and ideologies to the population upon which they have such a massive impact. This writer is one who doesn't believe that things happen simply by chance, and as such, I prefer to analyze the reasons for which things happen the way that they do. So let me take a look at this link that I had in this article. This is where I say Brazil's media is and has been controlled by persons who consider themselves white and or see the world from a European mindset since its inception. So the point here is Brazil's billionaire and multimillionaire media moguls. Can we now understand the media's lack of racial diversity? So when you look at who controls, three of the top networks in Brazil, you got the Marinho family at the top. That's Global TV, which is arguably the nation's top television channel and has been for years. Come down here, you have Silvio Santos, who is the head of what is it, SBT channel. This is Edir Macedo. He's the head of Rede Record or Record TV. And then you have Roberto Civita. He's the head of the publishing company called Abril. So when you look at the monopoly of persons who consider themselves white in Brazil's media, these are some of the major media outlets. You have Global TV, Folha de Sao Paulo, which is like Brazil's New York Times. You have SBT, you have Band TV, Record TV, Estado de Sao Paulo, another major newspaper in Sao Paulo. And so you could just get an idea of what the owners of these media conglomerates look like. These are the people who are controlling Brazil's top media. So is there any surprise of why Black Brazilians are so, let's say, invisible or just made to look like second-class citizens in the nation's media when you see who the people running things are? So let me get back to the article. I think that speaks for itself. Where was I? When speaking of the blatant Eurocentrism evident in Brazil's media, we must consider the nation's past and its view towards its Black population. After the ending of about 350 years of slavery, the Afro-Brazilian population was simply thrown to the streets and basically left to its own resources. Black cultural practices such as samba, capoeira, and candomblé were either frowned upon, restricted, repressed, or outright outlawed. These practices were seen as practices of vagrants and horrible reminders of Brazil's connection to Africa, that should be disregarded if Brazil were to build itself into a powerful, respectable country to the rest of the world. In fact, before slavery actually came to an end, elites came to a conclusion about what to do with its huge population of African descent. As this group was seen and blamed as a constant reminder of the nation's backwardness, it was believed that for the nation to move forward, this population should disappear or be replaced with a more European looking group. And rather than sending unwanted blacks back to Africa or direct mass genocide, miscegenation was accepted as the best mechanism for the slow disappearance of the black race. This is a topic I've talked about over and over. There was a plan in place in Brazil to promote miscegenation or racial mixing, with the hope that within 3 to 4 generations, Black Brazilians would have lighter and lighter skin until their family, just becomes white, over 3 or 4 generations, right? Regular readers of this no doubt have read about this policy of embranquecimento or whitening, which is what I was just talking about in numerous previous posts. But understanding this policy is of absolute importance to comprehending how Afro-Brazilians are seen and dealt with to this day. Afro-Brazilian youth are 77% of the young people murdered every day across the country and are 4 times more likely to be murdered than white youth. Black Brazilians are nearly invisible in politics, executive positions in businesses that run the country, and nearly non-existent in school textbooks that tell the history of the country. So let's take a look at a couple of the links here. I can't remember. I think Black Brazilians being like top management or CEOs of top companies in Brazil. I think it was less than 5% some years ago. I think it was 5%. Don't quote me on that. Okay, look, this is from 2014. While still a minuscule figure, Black executives of Brazil's top 500 companies jumped from 1.5 to 5.3% in the last decade. Access to education is still key to diversity. What else do we have here? Because we say nearly non-existent. Black Brazilians are nearly non-existent in school textbooks. Oftentimes, when Black people do appear in school textbooks, it's only in the context of 350 years of slavery, as if that's the only time that the history of Black Brazilians should be told. I've mentioned before, November is Brazil's month of Black consciousnness, but where are the Black heroes in the history of Brazil? And there are plenty of heroes that we could talk about. Zumbi dos Palmares being one of the most popular. His wife Dandara dos Palmares. What else do we have here? Okay, so this is this whole article, but this is the whole point. A lot of Black children and adults who grow up remember being in school and how embarrassed they felt sitting in a class where the only time a Black person would come up in a textbook was in the context of slavery, as if that's the only part that Black Brazilians played in the history of the country. Okay, let me see, where else are we? Let me see. Okay, this representation of the Afro-Brazilian continues in the realm of media, the means by which most in the country receive information and with which they form opinions on subjects in relation to the Brazilian experience. When visible descendants of Africa are constantly presented in secondary or supporting roles, servants, and vagabonds, what opinion of this group will the population at large form? We also see that in novellas or soap operas, when Black characters are featured in romantic settings, they are consistently paired with white partners. White characters that are the vast majority in these fictional series are overwhelmingly paired with white partners. What is the message here? What I get from these negative, secondary, and near invisible images are simply a continuation of the desire to eliminate the Black element from not only the social imagination, but from existence. In many ways, the media represents not only how the society sees itself, but also how it wishes to see itself. The closer to white, better. That's basically what it's saying. For these reasons, this writer has long stopped expecting the media to make any sort of change in relation to depictions of Afro-Brazilians. It is expressing exactly what Brazil itself has thought and wanted since at least the late 19th century, that is, a whiter looking Brazil. As such, the objective of reports here are simply to inform our readers of the situation. So, as I am saying, things are changing, but when there's drastic changes, all of a sudden you have to wonder where that's coming from, and that's something I'm gonna have to address in the coming weeks after I've it, before I returned to the United States. I saw a lot of positive changes in terms of Black representation in the media, film, television, advertising, and I just wondered where all of that was going. Well, now I know the answer. I just Before I get into that, I just wanted to lay the context of why these changes are, why it seems to be a positive thing. But also, I have to expose why there seem to be so many Black Brazilians as the majority of, we'll say, the cast in films and now in television novellas. I just wanted to know what's sparking all of that, and I'm going to get to that one of these days. But to continue this article, with that said, here is Kelly Sousa's view on the role of Blacks on Brazilian television. So, again, piece by Kelly Sousa. So she says, in times in which we continue to see Black women and men only in vintage novellas or soap operas representing a slave, I always wonder for how long. This is something that I've talked about in a previous video. Brazil seems to have a fascination with presenting novellas, soap operas in the era of slavery. And it's the time when you're going to see a lot of Black bodies on the screen because they're talking about the slavery era. But again, she's asking, how long? Days after the Record Network debuted another novella with the plot focused on slaves, entitled Escrava Mãe, which means slave mother. The novella tells the story of the mother of the slave Izara, the white slave educated in the Casa Grande, meaning big house, and of noble character, but that suffered the constant harassment of her master. So these are some of the actors and actresses that appeared in that novella, Escrava Mãe, again, meaning slave mother. This is Nayara Justino. This was a young lady who she was featured in a vignette, one of the yearly commercials that come on that would alert Brazilians that Carnival was coming. You always had this Black woman gyrating, dancing the samba in a 30 second to a minute commercial clip. And people, generally the Black women chosen for that particular role were usually on the lighter brown skin on the color spectrum. And she was the darkest woman who had ever been, given that role. And Brazilian society rejected her. So they took that role away from her. She was depressed because of how humiliating could it be? She actually won on a reality show to, take on this role as the dancing girl to alert the country that Carnival was coming. And she hid away for a while, and then she popped up with her first role in the novella. Now, I haven't heard much from her lately. I don't know how the acting, how it panned out for her. I'll have to look into see, where she is these days. But this was her first and maybe only novella. I don't know if she's done any other novella since then. I have to look into that. So anyway, she continues. I watched the first chapter to have an opinion and have a little hope of seeing something new. I was disappointed once again. I usually don't watch novellas or soap operas as the focus tends to be on the whites of the plot and Blacks only appear to suffer. But was it what was happening at that moment in history? Yes, it was worse. The biggest problem is not putting it on the screen, really, because we all watched 12 anos de escravidão, meaning 12 years a slave. That was a big movie in Brazil as well, and realized that it was something very well done. And in the US, Blacks are on television. The question is, we have novellas throughout the history of Brazilian teledramas in which there was not even one Black person who was not used to serve whites. Usually, Blacks in novellas don't have a formed family and are never successful, are never protagonists, and carry the great stereotypes of being vagabonds and lazy. So listen to what she said here. Throughout the history of Brazilian telenovelas or teledramas, in which there was not even one Black who was not used to serve white people. So that's what she's saying. It's, Okay, so you might have a black person here and there, but in their role of the novella, they're always just put in there to serve the white, the white characters of the particular novella. Oftentimes they don't have a full family structure that shows them as, as being more than just an extra, in that particular production. So this is what she's saying here. How long can this go on? It's like you're going to present black people as slaves. You're going to present them as vagabonds, lazy stereotypes, people who don't seem to have a family, and they're there serving white. So this has been the depiction of black actors, black characters in Brazilian novellas for, decades now. Even more intriguing, in 1969, when we had a prominent black actress, the dear Ruth de Souza, she died I don't know, within the last, I don't know, maybe 4 years, Ruth de Souza passed away. She was in her 90s, one of the most legendary black actresses in the country. So, 69, Ruth de Souza in a novella with a big audience called Cabana do Pai Tomás, we also had blackface. A couple of things to point out here. A Cabana do Pai Tomás was a novella that was actually a Brazilian take on Uncle Tom's Cabin. Um, and the actor that was supposed to portray the black male in this particular novella was actually a white man wearing blackface. Brazil has its own history of wearing blackface in the media, whether on stage or in novellas, um, variety shows. I've seen it. I think it was like going back to maybe 2000, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, up in there. It just seems like the country citizens just became fascinated with wearing blackface to the point where there were so many incidences of blackface going on for a while there. I was just wondering, is Brazil the new country of the home of blackface? Like, what's going on? So one of these days I have to talk about that. This whole thing with blackface in Brazil. It's when I first discovered it, it was through this Carnival group. And when I questioned a prominent Afro-Brazilian lawyer about it, he was like, "Yeah, it's the one time a year where we allow them to, have this type of joke with the black population." I was like, "Well, I'm not laughing." It would take a couple more years for Afro-Brazilian activists started making an issue out of blackface. Like, why are you guys doing that now? Blackface in Brazil, it's got its own little twisted history. Um, so again, we also had blackface. They simply painted a white man black. In 1976, Escrava Isolda had a slave as a protagonist, but this one was as white as the one mentioned above. Both were successful novellas. Okay. So this is the legendary Ruth de Souza. Like I said, she died. I think it had to have been about 3, 4 years ago now. One of the most legendary black actresses in the history of the country. And as I said, this is the actor known as Sergio Cardozo. This is actually a white man wearing blackface for this role. In an interview with the Observatory of Right to Communication, the advertiser and executive director of the Ethnic Media Institute, Paulo Rogério Nunes, says there is still enormous racism in Brazilian television, and American TV has more blacks acting than in Brazil, which is a majority black country. Again, I always have to point it out. Afro-Brazilians call it, Afro-Brazilian activists will define Brazil as a majority black country, where others disagree with that. Paulo Rogério Nunes has become a very important figure. I've met. I consider Paulo to be a friend. I've had contact with him for a number of years. To make a reflection, this is Paulo talking. To make a reflection, let's remember who Mussum was. Now, Mussum was a popular. He started off as a musician with a samba group called Os Originais do Samba, and he branched off into acting. He started doing skit comedy, and he just became a well-known and beloved figure in Brazilian entertainment. But it's one of those things where you wonder if people are laughing with him or laughing at him because of some of the roles, how he was depicted on television. I had to do a whole story on Mussum because it's intriguing. Um, a drunken black man, a stereotype of a ragged black man, a vagabond with no perspective. At various times in television dramas and other productions of Brazilian television, there is a very large load of stereotypes and prejudices. There is a deliberate action to, besides underrepresenting, placing Black men and women on a level of inequality or of inferiority. And that is detrimental to whoever watches. This is again Paulo Rogério speaking in this last paragraph here. I remember this. This was a television series. I think came out. Don't remember the year. Might have been 2013, 14, 15, somewhere in there. It was called Sex e as Negas. It was promoted as a sort of Black Brazilian Sex in the City. And before this series even debuted, people had problems just with the name of the series. You know, you could loosely translate it as Sex and as Negatives or something like that. And it was just full of stereotypes. It presented Black women as just sexual beings. And Afro-Brazilian activists took to the internet to voice their displeasure with this series. It went out in a blaze of stereotypes, and it was never considered coming back for a second season after people just totally, demolished it online. Let me see. The controversial series Sexy as Negas outraged many in the Black community that called for the end of the series. And who watches these novellas? For young Blacks or even children in the process of the formation of their identity, the Black will always carry that stereotype that TV delimits. TV often reaffirms every kind of racism that we see in society. A television network that shows an extremely whitened Egypt with only one light-skinned Black woman is the same network that bragged and made a question of showing the entire cast of Black people that interpret the slaves of the new novella. So I'm gonna just touch on this for a second. Brazil has had a number of historical novellas that's like based in the Bible era. And just like, its American counterparts, it tends to present, times in biblical history as being depicted by mostly white people. TV series completely whitens ancient Egypt, cast 40 actors, all white. So, Brazil, this was a novella that's called José do Egito, which means like Joseph from Egypt. Okay. And so you see this. These are the type of people that they use to portray the ancient Egyptians. Again, the whole discussion on what color were the ancient Egyptians. If you leave it up to the Brazilian television network, and of course, several in the United States, they want to see white faces representing ancient Egypt. Okay. Continuing, there are a bunch of extremely competent Black actors, but that have no space on TV, cinema, and not even in Brazilian theater. Is it because the media is racist? Yes. Is it because the Brazilian people, lovers of telenovelas, are racist? That too. I will say that in recent years, with like Black stereotypes and invisibility in Brazilian television, a lot of Brazilian theater groups started coming and taking their act to the stage. Like, okay, we can't tell our story on television and in film. We'll take it to the stage. So that's another thing I want to cover very soon. Just Afro-Brazilian theater. It's pretty incredible because they've managed to take Black history, Black culture, the Black existence in Brazil and present it on stage. Right. A lot of talent in Brazil in terms of actors and actresses. Brazil is a racist country, and this is no different when it comes to media. Check out this wonderful interview in Portuguese with filmmaker, researcher, and writer from Minas Gerais, which is a state in southeastern Brazil. The director named Joel Zito Araújo. He's one of the top Afro-Brazilian film directors in the country. He's the author of the book and documentary A Negação do Brasil, which was released in English as Denying Brazil. It's a book and documentary that documents the stereotypes about Black Brazilians in the ever popular television novellas. Everybody in Brazil watches these novellas, so it's very revealing how they portray Black people in them. You probably remember when actress Thais Araújo was a protagonist in a certain global network novella, and she was highly criticized. The script was not favorable to the Black woman occupying the role of Helena. hitherto occupied by mulheres brancas or white women. So this popular character in Brazilian novellas known as Helena has been interpreted by various white women over the years. And so there was a lot of pushback when Thais Araújo, who is seen in this picture, when she became a black Helena. People didn't like that. I mean, what does that say? The public reacted, and it was not little. The actress herself said that she thought her career would end there. She got so much negative feedback from playing, a black Helena that she actually thought that her career was going to go down the drain because of this. So this is Thais Araújo in the novella Viver a Vida. Until when will blacks not have space on Brazilian television? Until when will we have to watch novellas in which blacks always carry stereotypes and karmas that are integrated into society? How long will we be the supporting cast? I don't judge the actors or actresses who accept stereotype roles on television. No one lives on light, meaning, basically they have to eat. The ones who should be held responsible are the television networks, but we need positioning. In recent years, we have seen some highlights for Black actors, but always those who have a certain standard and that are accepted by the media. I've already said, and I repeat, that my dream is to watch something on television where we have a Black actress with dark skin in the style of somebody like Lupita. But every day I lose more hope. There is still much to be done, both in film and on television. Blacks are not performing as they should be. Now, this is actually Lázaro Ramos, who is Thais Araújo's husband. It's like they're a couple that's formed of arguably the top Black actress and Black actor in the country. They're a couple. And Lázaro Ramos, in 2012, he became the first Black male protagonist of a novella. This is like the first Black heartthrob. What the success, this is Epica magazine. It says, what the success of actor Lázaro Ramos in the role of a rich playboy and seducer reveals about the ascension of Blacks in Brazil. So 2012 was the first time you're going to get a Black male actor in such a role. I mean, what does that say about Brazil's media that you got to go all the way to 2012 to have a Black actor in such a position, right? I prefer not to watch or follow these novellas. They don't represent me, so I don't watch them. But we must discuss them, as most Brazilians end up forming their opinions from these dramas. And if we keep living in the past century, our people will never be recognized. I think that about says it all. I mean, this gives you an insight into how Black Brazilians are feeling about being depicted on Brazilian television. As I said, in the year 2023, I do see some positive changes, but this is where it's coming from. Either very little representation, stereotypical representation. You got blackface going on. You got novellas where if you want to see a lot of people with brown skin, it has to be a novella based in the slavery era. So this is what we got going on with Brazil's media. So again, it's the United States that's the racist country, according to a lot of Brazilians, but this is the way they present, and they continue to present Brazilians on television. It is slowly changing, but this is even just as recent as 2016, this was the image of Black Brazilians on television, okay? So I'm going to end this video here. Curious to know what you thought. Definitely drop a comment in the comment section. Consider subscribing to this channel if you will watch more than a couple of videos and you like the content. Share this video and also click on that notification bell so that you will be alerted when I put up new material. And with that said, I'm going to end the video here and ask that you come and check out the next one that I post.